All right, and we should be live.
All right.
Am I introducing us?
I could, as soon as I figure out my sound problem. There we go.
Oh, you're having a sound problem?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're live. Yeah. All right. All right. Yay. No. All right, I think we're live. So everybody, welcome. I'm Darby. I'm Darby Harn, and I'm the author of Dead MALLS, which we're going to talk about tonight. And I am joined by the amazing A.J. Calvin and Adam Bassett. And we're going to talk about the book and their books and whatever crazy stuff comes up. And it'll be fun and hopefully entertaining. And yes, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. You can go first, AJ.
All right, sure. I'm AJ Calvin. I write epic fantasy and some sci-fi. I have a sci-fi book coming out later this year. And I have read Darby's Eververse series. I highly recommend them if you like superhero books. Check them out.
Thank you. I'm reading AJ's book right now. Sorry, Wraith in the Revolution, which is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
It's awesome.
And I am Adam. I am the author of Digital Extremities and Animus Paradox, a couple of short, one's a short story collection, one is a short novel, and they're all set in the same world because I find that very fun. I find it fun to like have one setting and then just figure out what I can do with it. So yeah, and I'm also a little bit on the side. I do some map design, and I did the map design for Dead MALLS. It was my first fictional mall directory, which was very fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So Adam did this amazing thing, which is to design like a classic sort of mall. I think we started talking about a different project in the beginning, and then I was like, hey, I actually have this other thing. Would you be into that? And I wanted like that classic mall directory you find in the shopping mall, but a little bit skewed, a little bit strange, because Dead MALLS is kind of strange. And Adam did that, and it's amazing. It's really cool. You guys can check it out. You can see it on the Kickstarter page. And I've dropped a link to that in the chat if you guys want to check that out at any time. We funded yesterday in a couple hours, so that was really cool. And I want to thank everybody who backed it, including Adam, who is giving me back some of his money to get this book. Which this is the proof copy. Whoops, kind of see it. This is the proof copy right here.
Can I make you a large version? Oh, that's just me. Oh God. I don't know how to change.
That one looks good.
This one? We want to do this one? All right.
That's good, yeah. So yeah, this is the hardcover proof copy for Dead MALLS. It's a VHS sort of case, and there will be a dust jacket, and there'll be some other stuff, including the end papers, which are not in here, but will be on your final copy of the mall map directory, because we have reached the first stretch goal, which is the end papers of the book, of the map, that Adam made, which is just really amazing. And it's also available for folks who buy the ebook tier and they get a digital art package. You can get a digital download of the map. I wanted to make sure people could get it that way too, because it's just so much fun. I don't know, how annoying was I, Adam, and like giving details, trying to help convey them all?
You were not annoying at all. You left a lot to me to sort of figure out on my own, which is both a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of that there weren't like stage directions of like, this store has to be in this location, this character runs through this particular hall. Like, there wasn't really a whole lot of that. It was more like there needs to be a couple of key locations, and then you would yell at me if they were wrong. But other than that, like, it was kind of just like, I did a lot of research on, what does a mall directory look like, especially one that's kind of dated, like this mall is supposed to be, because it sort of went out of business. I believe we talked about like sometime in the late 90s, and it was late 90s it kind of went out, or early 2000s. Yeah. But then, of course, like, toward the later years, they wouldn't have bothered to put together the materials for a brand new directory. And so I'm kind of going back a little bit further than even that, and trying to figure out, like, what do those mall directories look like? How can I, make it represent that kind of style while still being like easily read in the book and on the ebook and all that kind of stuff. Making sure that the text is never too small, and the wear on the page that like makes it look older and everything, and the couple of stains that you see on it and stuff like that doesn't obscure important information. We talked about, there was a fun bit toward the end where we talked about like one of the characters has written on notes onto the map directly, and what are some things that they would say, and what is their writing style. And I think I actually ended up using my own handwriting, maybe a little bit. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit exaggerated, I think, to sort of get the effect we were looking for. But yeah, I just wrote directly on it myself.
That was really cool. We did talk about that, and it got, I know a little bit at the end, I got probably a little bit crazy because I wanted to get like super meta, and you were like, wait. But the mall map is really cool because there is some sort of, the character who's writing on it is Diane, and I suppose I should probably actually talk about what the book is just a little bit.
Yeah, I guess we should probably do that a little bit.
For people who may be curious, I hope you are. So the book is Dead Malls, and it's basically my Valentine to all things 80s. So I'm an 80s kid, and I grew up on Stephen King. I grew up on Choose Your Own Adventure, and a lot of bad 80s horror movies, straight to VHS, things like that. And so basically this book is if I sort of describe it as if Stephen King wrote a Choose Your Own Adventure novel. And there is an element of choose your own adventure, of interactive fiction, lit RPG, maybe a little bit on the margins, element to the book. It's meant to be a surprise. It's meant to be a spoiler, but I found that it's better to sort of forecast that for people than it is to spring it on them. Some people really are into it, and other people who read it in the beta stages where maybe would have liked to have known that going in.
I'm just imagining I don't know if you've seen the Clue movie.
Yes.
Like the old one where it's like a linear movie the whole time, and then at the very end it's like, which ending do you think it is?
Yeah. I actually was on a panel at Indianapolis Comic-Con a few weeks ago about Clue, which is the 40th anniversary this year. Which, how is it 40 years? But it's the interaction part, the choose your own adventure part of this book happens a little bit sooner than the end, but it does play into the end, and I just really wanted to have fun with it. And it's sort of a two-hander, I guess, between two characters, Sam and Diane. Sam is a security guard working in the mall. The mall is really on its last legs. Sam is just there guarding literally nothing. Sam's having a very rough time of it. Sam's sleeping in their car, living out of their car, I should say, washing up in the mall bathroom. One night, Sam happens upon an intruder in the mall. That person is Diane, who claims to be a survivor of a nuclear war, which happened in 1983. And then things get weird. Sam is the guard of the mall in the present day. And it gets really, there's almost some haunted house vibes with the mall. It gets very strange. It gets very twisty, but it's also a lot of fun. It's also just weird in that sort of 80s sort of mashup sci-fi fantasy horror way. I think of Gremlins. I think of the Night of the Comet, movies like that, where they just were just, a little bit all over the place, but like in a good way. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Stephen King, who I was reading way too young, and who was a huge influence on me for sure. And it's sort of a commentary a little bit on what it was like to be a kid in the 80s, which was both exhilarating. You sort of were spoiled rotten as far as the pop culture stuff. And then it was also terrifying because you were living with this constant threat of nuclear annihilation, which at the time, especially 1983, which is when Diane hails from, was so real as to be nauseating, really, even if for someone of her age, which she's only 9 years old when this happens. So she carries around this Christmas catalog, department Christmas store catalog, and she's really the only thing she has left. And it plays a big role in the book in terms of it seems to have way more power than just sentimental value, and it becomes the object really of what everything seems to be about. And that's kind of the book in a nutshell. Hopefully people are into it. People who love horror, sci-fi, strange weirdness, and choose your own adventure. If you're into that, maybe you'll like it. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun. And like your description of it was making me think of the mall we used to go to when I was a kid. Like it was just kind of dark. Everything, like the tile was brown and it was a little creepy. And yeah.
I had the idea for our mall here in town, which is actually Crossroads Mall, which is the name of the mall in the story, is now empty completely, and they're going to tear it down here in, I don't know, a few months or something. But when I was a kid, it was like this palace, right? It was the epicenter of everything. And so we didn't have any money at all. So like Diane. And so the only thing you really had to look forward to were things like the catalog, which they sent you in the mail for free, which was this giant phone book thing. And we would just pour over that, my brother and I, as kids, and just sort of imagine what it'd be like to own all these things you're never going to own. And the sort of the kernel for the story started there with imagining. For some reason, my brain was like, you know, if this nuclear war had actually happened in 1983, my brother and I would have been sitting in our basement in Iowa reading this catalog in the dark as, you know, the world sort of wound down. And I had that sort of idea for a while. And it wasn't until I was setting up at a show in a shopping mall about a year and a half ago, super early in the morning. It's dark, it's cold, it's strange, it's creepy, like you said. There's no one there, there's shadows, there's sounds. For whatever reason in my brain, it clicked that those two things, the catalog, the nuclear war, and the shopping mall went together. And then the whole book just exploded. It's like one of the most instant, for me, like one of those instant lightning bolt ideas. I don't know if it was instant, but it was about as close as you can get. And so, yeah, I was really excited to dive into it. Yeah.
Awesome. So you've got some like really cool different covers and like visuals and stuff, really like emphasizing sort of like the VHS and like the arcade and stuff. How much are those just like visual things to sort of sell the vibe, or are those important things to the story as well?
I suppose both. I really wanted the 80s vibe, and I spent a long time thinking about the presentation of the cover. And so the cover illustration, by the way, is by Al Hess, who is the author of World Running Down and Key Lime Sky. And Al just today or yesterday was named a semifinalist in the self-published science fiction contest.
Oh, wow.
And Al's also an amazing artist and a very dear friend. And so Al did the cover. Al does most of my covers for my books, which you can see the originals up here actually somewhere. This is Kit over here for Ever the Hero. And and so we knew early on we kind of wanted to do some sort of VHS sort of throwback thing. But then I thought about, you know, I thought about the choose your own adventure thing, but there's way too many legal landmines surrounding choose your own adventure to even suggest any sort of direct homages. So I did a little bit of an Atari video game homage on the paperback. And so actually the the VHS hardcover and the Atari paperback or arcade paperback are both exclusive to the campaign. You can only get them through there. There'll be a retail paperback later this year, which will be sort of a variation of the VHS cover, I guess, but it won't have the hard case or anything like that. But I just really wanted an 80s vibe, and the more I did it, the more I had fun with it. And part of that was like the stickers.
Yeah, I love the stickers.
Thank you. Yeah, and things like that. And just tried to make it fun. I'm a very visual person, so and the Kickstarter campaigns really sort of lend themselves to a very visual presentation, and some of the big ones that you see are just way beyond my sort of pay grade. But you see, I really enjoy the process of creating it. It takes a long time. This was months and months and months and months and of planning and everything like that. But I really enjoyed it. I hope people dig it. I'm torn between which one I like the most, the VHS or the arcade. Mm-hmm. I think I had the most fun with the arcade one because I did that one. Once I had Al's illustration, I did the arcade one by hand myself. And I wanted it to mimic the Atari, the 2600 sort of vibe as much as I could. So around that time that Diane would have seen these things. So 1983, I think, was the 2600. Mm-hmm. And she would have seen it in the toy store or Sears. She certainly couldn't have afforded it. But yeah, so it was just a lot of fun putting it together.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I like the arcade one, but I really like the sort of like wear and tear, especially on the VHS. Like that came out really well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was Al definitely wanted me to go hard on the wear and tear and sort of the throwback vibes. And there was just there were so many things you could do, like with the stickers and all the stuff. And at some point you kind of had to try to control yourself a little bit to not go overboard and kind of just sort of focus on the presentation. But I wanted something that sort of evoked the 80s VHS, at the same time evoked sort of classic horror mass market paperbacks from the 80s, whether it was Stephen King or Peter Straub or Clive Barker, things like that. And tons and tons of other ones I remember seeing on the rack that I read. I should not have been reading when I was a kid. I would sit there at the newsstand when I was a kid. My mother would go shopping in the grocery store. I would just sit there at the newsstand. I would just read everything on the newsstand or whatever it was. It didn't matter. Time magazine or, Peter Straub. So, you sort of take all that in. But yeah, no, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you dig it. People seem to dig it overall. And at one point I had ideas for all different kinds of covers. And I had this idea that the tiers in the Kickstarter would be a little bit of choose your own adventure. That got way too complicated. So we just kept it as simple as possible.
Yeah, that's probably the right call.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will comment as well. Anyone who has questions about Dead Malls or the Kickstarter, feel free to throw those into chat.
Looks like we got a couple.
Yeah, we have Mike who's lamenting about mall security. Sounds like we might have hit a nerve.
Maybe, possibly.
And Aaron is asking what everyone's favorite mall memory is as a child. The whole story is here, but it stirs up memories. Curious to know yours. I'll get mine out of the way because I don't think I have one. I didn't go hang out at the mall. Like that is not a thing that I've ever done.
Oh, wow.
I would go there with a purpose. I would do the thing that I wanted to do, and then I would leave. And that is it. It's very transactional. I did used to work at a movie theater in our local mall. And I mean, that was fun. There were some just hanging out with the people at work and stuff, and friends who were there as well. I mean, other than that, like I just didn't spend much time there. Especially after I started working there. I didn't want to be there anymore.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, so my mom used to work in a bank for many, many years. So she was constantly shopping for clothes because she had to have nice stuff working at the bank. And there was a store in our mall that she liked to go to, Joslin's. I don't think it exists anymore. But when my brother was, I don't know, 2 or 3, he decided to have an adventure. And he was hiding in the middle of one of the clothes racks. And we ended up having to get like security involved because we couldn't find him. And then he was just sitting in the middle of the clothes rack, like hiding.
So he won.
Yeah, he won.
I have a bunch of mall memories. One that stands out that Aaron probably remembers. Aaron is my brother. So thanks, Aaron, for joining us. I think this must have been 1984. It was 40. It's Christmas Eve. It's 40 below out when that was really rare in Iowa. Now it's like every other day in the winter. And we had gone to JCPenney's in the mall and to get, I guess, last minute gifts. And one of them, which was supposed to be a surprise, but we figured out, was the R2D2 sort of toy box, and which I still have. And they closed the mall, though. They closed the Pennies. I can't remember how this happened. But anyway, we got locked inside the mall. They closed, people left, and it was 40 below out. It was like dark and freezing and cold and weird. And I don't remember how we got home other than we did. But it was, I remember very vividly opening the door to the mall, out of Pennies into the parking lot, and this 40 below wind just like cutting like right through you. I'll never forget it. It was
It just makes me cold listening to that.
It was something else. But I would just spend, as Diane does, as she reminisces in the book, I would just spend a lot of time there in the toy department, certainly, sort of spending time with toys that you couldn't afford, and daydreaming, and spending time in the electronics department and sitting in front of the TVs, and which at that time were gigantic, and all that type of stuff. And you were just sort of visiting. You were like a tourist in a shopping mall, but not like you couldn't afford anything. You were just passing through.
That's how I felt. I've been to New York City a couple of times, and especially the first time I was there when I was much younger, my parents made a big deal of like going to the Macy's or something, and they didn't buy anything. They didn't do anything. They just walked around and looked at all the stuff. I'm like, why are we here? I've already explained my very transactional relationship with malls and shopping centers. Like, just me walking around this space with nobody had any intention to do anything there other than to walk around. And just like, we could literally be seeing so many things right now, and we're inside of a shopping center. Like, why?
So I have a story about just walking through a mall. My husband, so our very first date, we went out to dinner, and afterwards we weren't sure what to do. And he's like, well, the mall's not that far away. And we ended up just walking around the mall for like 3 hours. We didn't shop or anything. We just walked around the mall.
Yeah, doing that or going to the movie theater. And actually, I was thinking a lot about Val Kilmer today. And I was wondering if you guys have any memories of the 80s or 90s sort of movies, going to the movie theater, going to the mall. And do you have like a favorite memory about that? Because my God, I got a few about Val Kilmer. I remember, and the drive-in as well. I remember seeing Willow at the drive-in. So that was, what was that, 88, I think. And, Top Gun, all of that stuff.
I don't remember going to the movies much as a kid. Like, we didn't have a lot of money for stuff like that either. So we would, the VHS tapes, like, that's what I loved about your Kickstarter, because I was like, we had so many of those because we would record them from the TV. But I'm trying to think. I remember when we went to see Jurassic Park in the theater. That was a big deal. And My brother and I probably shouldn't have seen that movie when we did, because I think I was 10. So he would have been like 7. And he spent half the movie hiding behind the chairs in front of him, but dinosaurs were cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that movie still holds up too. Like, I
Yeah.
can't imagine seeing it for the first time back then. Yeah, I don't remember the 90s. Like, all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born in 93. So I
Jeez.
was a baby.
Whatever.
So yeah, that whole thing kind of passed me by, but I mean, I was still around for the if not the golden age, then the end of going to the rental store and picking up something for the weekend, go to the Blockbuster and pick up a movie for the family, and maybe I'll get a N64 game or something. I'd go every weekend I would go and get a rental copy of the original Super Smash Bros, which was a good time. Yeah, so like that's more my relationship with like VHSs and all that kind of stuff. Like that really rings a bell for me. And like the old game systems, like I used to have a old NES for and my aunt had this big box of like 80 NES games that she just dropped off one day. She's like, I don't know what's in here, but nobody plays them at my house anymore, so here you go. Which I don't know where they all went, like genuinely. There's still a few kicking around my parents' place, but yeah, that's more my relationship with the 90s, is like all those things that you could rent and try out, and some of those classic games and stuff. I always love those.
Another big thing I remember about the mall that I really miss is like the B. Dalton's, the bookstore.
Yes.
Where I just lived there. I'd go to the mall and I would just spend so much time there, and it's just different. Barnes and Noble's great, of course, but it
has a different feel. Yeah.
Yeah. And back in the 80s and 90s, the B. Dalton, and there was another one. I think there was another one besides B. Dalton, but they still had the newsstand. They had the comic book rack. They had all that stuff, and you could just spend hours and hours there, which of course I did. And you just sort of read everything, and you were sort of exposed to the books and authors. This is, of course, a very different time in the publishing industry, but you were exposed to felt like more people than you are now. The discovery it could be just that I'm old, but it feels like the discovery in Barnes and Noble is not really what it used to be.
I think, well, it's every Barnes and Noble is different now. Is part of the thing, which I think is probably good, but there's never a point where you go out to every single one usually now. Now it's like I'm out at this particular one, or I'm out at these particular ones.
Yeah. And they're great. I think of the one in Union Square there in New York, where they have still, I think, but they did a few years ago. They had one of the POD printing machines right there in the store. They could print you whatever you wanted. They could print it right there on site. And that was the first time I had seen one of those. And then
that's really cool.
It was very cool. And it sort of got me, like a lot of people, I'm sure, sort of thinking, well, I could, as far as the indie publishing part, this is possible now. I can do this. And it's not as ridiculous as it used to be. Certainly not as expensive as it used to be, though. It is very expensive, and it feels like it gets more expensive every day with some things that are going on, but whatever. We'll do our best with that. But yeah.
You mentioned B. Dalton's, and that was actually kind of a moment of discovery for me, because I've never heard of B. Dalton's. You were like, oh, there has to be a B. Dalton's. This is like one of the 5 locations that are named in the story, and like we have to include in the map. And I was like, okay, cool. That's like his fictional bookstore for the story, that like he didn't want to use a real name or something. And then I at some point looked it up and discovered it was a real place, and I was like, oh. And then that like sent me down a rabbit hole of looking up other like mall stores that had sort of either fallen out of fashion or closed down at some point over the last 20-ish years. So yeah, there's a couple of those on the map where it's like I needed to fill stores to make it look realistic and like like a real directory. And there were a few in there that were things I just discovered along the way where it's like, oh, this is a place that doesn't exist anymore. That would help make it like dated correctly.
Absolutely. It's great. For 80s kids, there's some great Easter eggs in the mall map directory. And it's just really cool. And my only real idea with the map was that I wanted it, because it's like a horror thing, I wanted the mall to be like in the shape of like a skull kind of a thing. And that's really the only thing. And then after that, it was just sort of making sense of the interior. And Adam was just fantastic. And like the whole process of designing and developing it and making it just really fun and, and ultimately interactive a little bit, with Diane sort of scribbling on the map, which is alluded to in the story, and sort of her sense of her mall, which is the same mall as Sam's, but due to the weirdness of the story are actually two very different places. So you get to see both of those in the story. So hopefully that's very cool. Yeah. So if there's anything else in the chat.
Mike called out some of their favorite memories of the mall: KB Toys, the arcade.
The arcade, yeah.
My nephew goes to the arcade at the mall every chance he can get. He loves it there.
I miss it. I'm not really much of a gamer, but I miss the arcade. I loved the arcade when I was a kid, and almost the atmosphere more than anything else, like the sound and all of that stuff. But
yeah, it's a very distinct kind of place to just hang out.
Definitely. KB Toys, I missed that. Our mall had a KB, and then a Children's Palace, which was tucked back in the corner, which is the toy store. I don't believe it's named in the book, but is the toy store that Diane is in Diane's mall, that she remembers from 1983. And it was very small, and in our mall at least, it was very small and dense. And so it was crammed with stuff. And when you're a kid and you're little and you're just like, Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Atari and all that stuff. And this is the height of the Cabbage Patch craze. Sorry.
We had an old Ames in my hometown. And that was a similar, very like crowded, like almost like a storeroom, but also it had these massive ceilings and like shelves that went all the way up to the top. And so I remember as a kid just like feeling completely lost walking through there.
I just remember thinking, in KB as well, I just remember when I was very young, I remember thinking that you were just like, the further you went back into the store, the deeper you got, because like the shelves and they would stack boxes and boxes of toys and games on top of the shelves. Just felt like you were tunneling into this place, and it was like really cool.
Yeah.
And scary at the same time. Right. What about you guys? Like, so I'm talking a lot about Dead Malls. What about your books though? Because you guys got some great books going on. You want to talk about your stuff?
Well, to be fair, we're talking about Dead Malls because you have a thing going on right now.
Well, I think people get it. The Kickstarter is awesome. Please check it out. The book is cool. The map is cool. But yeah, no, like if you guys want to talk about your books, like I said, AJ's book, Wraith and the Revolution, is really good. I'm not quite halfway through, but it's very, very good. Yes, it is.
I don't have my author copies yet. I got confirmation this morning they should be here Friday, so I'm really excited about that. But,
yeah, very nice.
Wraith and a Revolution is a standalone space opera sci-fi with some cyberpunk vibes, kind of. It will be coming out in June, so it's my first published sci-fi book. I'm really excited for it.
And AJ, you said you've had this idea for Wraith for a really long time, right?
Yeah. Some of the characters in the book I came up with when I was like 12 or 13, so it's going on 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've just been like working on this story forever, it feels like. It's just, it took me a long time to actually get a story that worked with the pieces I had. And then like when it finally came together, it it came together. It was great.
I was a little bit like that with Stargun Messenger, where I had Stargun in some embryonic form going back to the late 90s. And it wasn't until the last, well, let's say 4 or 5 years that the book really crystallized. And actually, in the end, it was almost essentially what it was in the beginning. So I spent a much better version of it, but I spent a really long time beating myself up over the story that I think was always what it wanted to be. So I would say for maybe writers out there who are wondering about that, just trust your instincts. They're usually right. We can talk ourselves out of anything, writers. So, but that's really cool. What did you have like the characters first or the setting, or because the setting is very, very elaborate. I really enjoyed it. It reminds me a little bit of The Expanse. It's very like sort of the different layers and little communities and colonies and things like that.
Um, I I think some of the characters were first and then the setting came later. Like I had started various versions of this book. I don't even know how many times before it became this one. Um, but probably the two characters that have been around since I was like 12 or 13 were Soren. He's an engineer and hacker, and then Reginald Zylar, who is the CEO of the megacorp that sort of controls the galaxy. The other characters came in at various points over time later, and eventually everything just came together. So
very cool. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, it's very cool. I've been reading it as well. I think I'm just a little bit ahead of Darby. I just hit like roughly the 60% mark. I'm trying to. I want to finish it this month, so I'm pushing to get through. I really like the that initial concept of someone like biologically stuck on Earth. That is just like a very interesting approach that I haven't seen before.
That was actually one of the last pieces that came together for that story, because I had this idea of I wanted him to be stuck there, so that it was sort of the last resort option that he had to take to get off world. And I kept going over it and over it, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I was like, you know what? I have the answer. It's my genetics that basically make me ineligible for space travel. Why not put that in the book too? So
that's really fascinating. Yeah. How about you, Adam? What about your book?
Yeah, I shouted it out at the beginning, but
yeah,
I wrote Digital Extremities. It's really bright. I'm sorry about that. And Animus Paradox, which are two fairly short books.
they're both very good books, though.
Thank you. Yeah, the Digital Extremities is a short story collection. It's kind of starts as like light sci-fi and then progressively becomes a little bit heavier, a little bit more cyberpunk. Just kind of like telling stories about regular people out in the world in this increasingly cyberpunk space, but they're dealing with things like rent, and they live in like rural communities or like distant remote areas. So not the typical fight the AI, win the universe, whatever it is. My follow-up to that, Animus Paradox, is a lot more like that vibes wise. It is technically a sequel, but it has such a different tone. It's like a cyberpunk thriller. I've had people compare it to John Wick and stuff like that.
I could see that.
Yeah, I was really upset that I didn't come up with that myself. Somebody else who read an early review copy mentioned it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to tell that to everybody now. Yeah, that's what I'm up to. I've also, we've already mentioned I did the map for Darby's book. I think I'm gonna plan on including that actually in my next book, which is a book all about map design for fictional worlds, and the different ways you can approach that, different things to keep in mind. It's got like practical map design advice if you want to make your own, as well as a bunch of tips that you can apply just to your writing as well. I was actually talking about that with AJ recently too, so we're all going to be included a little bit. Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited about that as well. That's coming up fairly soon. I'll have some more news about it.
Cool. I dig it. I'm really glad that we all work together. We're all contributors to FanFiAddict, and we reviewers. And I'm really happy that I found the community and got to join the community and found Adam and got to do this very cool thing for the book. And then we're going to do, hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to do another project together.
I'm waiting on some news about what's happening.
Yeah, I'm just so like, life has been very rough lately, but then
it's totally fine. I am in no rush. I have plenty of other stuff to do.
Yeah, but you were like, "Come on, man, let's go." But I was like, I was like,
"Come on, let's go" a few months ago. Right now,
yes.
I'm making maps for my own book at the moment.
Yeah. This is like
I just got some stuff back from a beta reader that I'm going through now as well. So,
oh, cool. I will say, I'll tell people who are curious. AJ had mentioned my Eververse books earlier, and this map would be for Eververse Book 5, which is the next book in the sequence, and it'll be a map of Breakpoint, which is the city, the central location. And so I'm dying to see this. Because the city is, unlike the mall map, the Breakpoint is fairly well, how do I want to say it? It has a lot more structure than the mall did. It has a lot more key locations and things like that, which are pretty well established at this point in the series. So I'm looking forward to seeing those and represented and that type of a thing. And
is there any details on the ship? Like how?
The ship. We're going to find out more about the ship. And I suppose one thing Adam and I will probably talk about a lot is how to depict the ship and the quarantine zone in which the ship is behind. And I sort of always imagine that the ship is literally just sitting in a crater downtown. And it's behind a 30-foot wall of sort of steel reinforced concrete. But how big it is and how exactly how much space it takes up are sort of a little bit, I imagine nebulous. So those will be fun things to like talk about. And
I'm going to need some very well written and organized documents on this.
Yeah, this one would probably be a lot more intensive, maybe, than the mall. But I'm really looking forward to it. I am, and the book as well. I'm really dying to share book 5 with people. It will be the next Kickstarter as soon as that is possible, and then hopefully some of the uncertainty surrounding everything and the economy dies down, and there's less uncertainty about it for me. But I think the main thing is like for us as like indie authors, especially, is just to be sort of just to do your thing, I guess, and to do your best and try to speak to the moment, but then also just put your art out there and share. I think it's so important to share. Dead Malls is sort of, on one hand, has nothing to do with our moment. It's about a very specific point in time, but then I think it's also about a very general anxiety and fear that feels timeless, unfortunately. And
that timeless anxiety and fear. You gotta love it.
You gotta love it, yeah.
Throw your favorite anxiety and fear moments in the chat.
Yeah, let's have a big sharing session. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm very excited to. That was actually what we talked about originally, was that map, and then I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry, but we're only live. It's no big deal.
It's all good.
But yeah. If we have any questions other questions in the chat or things people want to share.
We haven't gotten anything new, but if anybody has questions about Darby's book Dead MALLS, it's on Kickstarter right now. There is a link in the chat if you haven't seen that and you're stumbling across it now. I will also add, just because I think this is fairly easy to miss on the Kickstarter, Darby's got the first 5 chapters available for free. Do you mind if I post a link to that in the chat just so people can find it easy?
No, yeah, please. Yeah, it's kind of, I suppose it's buried in there a little bit, but people can check it out, and they'll see right away that it is sort of a back and forth between Sam and Diane. And a little bit, I was thinking of This Is How You Lose the Time War, which is one of my favorite recent novels.
I got to get to that. That's on the shelf back there. No, it's somewhere.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and I was so inspired by that, and the back and forth, and then the second person too, which got me thinking about Choose Your Own Adventure again, which is all in the second person.
Oh, I didn't realize you did second person stuff in this.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of I'll let people find out on their own, but there's some of that, and then that gets I love the second person. I love the possibilities within it, and it gets really meta in some places in a hurry. And there's this great power and energy that comes with the second person that I really enjoy. There's a writer, Lori Moore, who is sort of, I guess, would be a literary writer, who is just employs second person, just extraordinary effect. And I was thinking about her, and I was thinking about Bret Easton Ellis, Bright Lights, Big City, from 80 something. Similar sort of just amazing, just the speed and the propulsiveness, and just the there's something about the second person which you wouldn't think at the beginning, or initially I should say, that would allow this, but it really gets under the skin of the character in the moment in a way that third person certainly doesn't, at least for me.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so tough to do and so polarizing, but when it's done well, like there's nothing like it. And I really respect that. Like I still remember to this day, there was a story from a short story collection called A Visit from the Goon Squad. I forget the author's name. But there's a short story in there which is in second person, and the main character is like he's on drugs basically the whole time, and so he's kind of like having this out of body experience, and so the entire thing is in second person, and it just lends to that like detached, uncomfortable feeling that the character is also feeling.
So that's Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, which she's a fantastic writer. Yeah, I love it. I am always encouraging it. I love the fights about the second person. I always have. Some people really hate it. I enjoy advocating for it. It's a hill I will die on, and it's a hill I've died on in Dead MALLS. So if you hate Dead MALLS, it's probably why. So I'm okay with it. So, all right. Yeah. Well, guys, no questions or any comments. Feel free to share in the chat. I suppose we have a few minutes left. What about you guys? Is there anything else that you guys want to share or talk about?
I don't think I have anything about my own stuff. I was a little curious. I think you may have touched upon it briefly, but there's in the Kickstarter, you talk about this like Christmas 1983 like gift catalog thing. Could you talk a little more about that maybe and just tell us what it's about?
Yeah, so I was thinking of, it would have been either Penny's or Sears or Montgomery Ward's. They would issue the Christmas catalog, and it would be before Amazon and before online. This was like the thing, the Bible of all the toys, which is all I cared about. But it was everything. It was their entire inventory. But if you were an 80s kid and a Star Wars fan, it was where you found really, it was basically this sort of encyclopedia of 80s toys and everything else, ephemera. And my brother and I would just lug this around, and we would circle the stuff we wanted and didn't get and all this other stuff. And you just sort of fantasize about it. And in the book, that's what Diane is doing. So
can you see like the stuff that she's circled, or is it just...
I did mock up. You will find in the book catalog pages, which I made, I constructed, and I tried to make as similar to 1980s catalog pages as I could. Try to get that vibe at least. I was limited in what I could do because I certainly couldn't reference directly products and brand names and things like that.
Sure, yeah.
So I just tried to get the vibe as close as I could. The main feature of the book is the catalog index, which in a department store catalog was basically what it sounds like. It was the index that included every single item, and on the page it was located on. In Dead Malls in the book, the index for Diane and her catalog, and by extension, the text of the novel, serve a very different function. And they serve a little bit of a meta function that leads into the choose your own adventure part.
Okay.
That I won't say too much more about, but it was a lot of fun. I hope people enjoy it. I hope it works. But it was a lot of fun and just a real joy and a treat to try to come up. It's almost a little bit of game mechanics, like from a lit RPG, not quite, but it functions in a similar way. And so I'm really curious to know what people think about it and just the whole experience of the book, because it starts to really branch at a certain point, and there's a lot of different doors that open figuratively and literally in the book that have to do with the catalog, that have to do with the mall itself, and then ultimately reality, because things get really messed up. So yeah, I dig it. This is probably the book I've always been wanting to write since I was a kid. This is in some ways is sort of it's a combination of all the things I've been thinking about for a really long time, whether it was just sort of 80s memories and the sort of latent fears, subliminal, so is that the right word? Fears of this nuclear anxiety, growing up as a kid, consumerism, and then just sort of in second person, just I'll die on this hill, that type of a thing, and all that's sort of all together, and hopefully in a story that I hope people really enjoy. I have heard lovely comments from people who've read it who think that Sam and Diane are really relatable and interesting, and they really care about them, which really makes me happy, because I really care about them too. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, it's quiet all of a sudden in the chat, just kind of a bummer, but well, if nothing else, I suppose we're getting up on closing time. I just want to thank you guys, Adam and AJ, so much for taking part in this with me, helping make this really fun. And Adam, thank you for the map. Thank you for putting up with me with all this stuff. And thank everybody who has backed the Kickstarter and supported the Kickstarter and boosted it and all that stuff. And thank you, Adrian, for letting us hang out on the channel tonight. This has been so much fun. It's a real treat. Thank you to everybody in the FanFiAddict community. It's been, I'm not super active in the Discord or anything. I'm terrible at Discord, but I really appreciate
it.
I really appreciate being there, being part of the community, and being able to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I will say that you do have a little bit of homework for us, because we have hit the first stretch goal, the $1,000 mark. There's no stretch goal yet for the next one.
So this is one of the weird things about Kickstarter. So the advice you always get is to be super coy about the stretch goals. Sometimes what they are, but then also the dollar amounts. And so the advice in most cases is to keep the dollar amounts secret in case you blow past them, and then you sort of exhaust your stretch goals immediately. I'm in no danger of blowing past any of them. So I can probably safely say tonight that the next stretch goal is the custom sprayed edges for the book, which is, there's sort of this weird TV glow lightning which spreads throughout the mall in the story, and you can see it on Al's illustration. And I think that will be, I think my sort of goal for that was $1,500 to unlock the sprayed edges. So if we can get there in the next 2 minutes, no.
If just one person gets the whole paperback catalog,
yeah,
we're so close.
We're so close. So I do actually see that some folks have backed it since we started the live stream. So thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, if you guys are still in the chat, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and help us get to 1,500 to get to the next part of it, and keep making the book as cool as it can be. And then it's all a learning process for me too. That's the other thing. It's like this is my third campaign, and they're very small, but each one is sort of I'm pushing myself both as a writer, but then also as I guess the production side of it. Part of that was the map, and then part of it is trying to make the book as cool and unique as I can. So yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can get there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's all very quiet now. So yeah,
this isn't my show. I'm waiting for you to decide what you want to do next.
It's terrible because I'm like the wrong guy to be the host. It's my party, but I'm a terrible host. But any final thoughts from you guys? AJ, are you still looking for ARC readers?
I'm not opposed to sending out if there's interest. I mean, I'm not actively looking for more at the moment, but
okay. But look forward to that, guys. Wraith in the Revolution, which is very cool, and you're going to want to read that, and that comes out in June, right? And
yep, June 17th.
And then Adam's books, which are very cool, and which I need to read, but then also his map book, which is coming up, and he's going to have stuff for us very soon on that.
Yeah, I'll have news about the map book very soon. It's going to take some more time for it to come out because there's some more illustrations that have to be made, and I'm planning on doing a Kickstarter for that as well, cool. Which still needs to get organized a little bit. But things are moving along at a good pace. I will say a much sooner release that I plan on doing. My sci-fi books are coming to audiobook. I've already got a couple of finished audio files from Avon Shore, who's doing a few chapters in the short story collection, and she absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I was talking with the other narrator who's doing the other half of that book, and Animus Paradox. I think I spoke with them 2 days ago, just like talking about some different pronunciations and stuff, making sure everything was correct. So things are moving along with that now, and I'm very excited about it.
That's cool. I need to get the audiobooks for mine. It's such a challenge, and it keeps it's sort of top of the list, but somehow keeps falling down as you do other stuff. But
yeah, I will say once I like reached out and got some agreements set up, I'm basically in a state of like wait for them to reach back out to me when they're done. Like I am not doing a lot of work in this process anymore, and I'm sure like when I'm getting the files, I'm going through and like reading along with their the recordings to make sure that there's no errors or anything, which takes a little bit of time, and I'm sure there'll be some setup for like once the files need to go out. But at that point, like you go to there's hubs where you can distribute to all of the locations all at once, or you just go to Amazon if you're going to be exclusive with them.
Definitely. And then I see now I got an invitation the other day to do their AI Amazon's AI. And I was like, no,
I got that months ago and I just deleted it immediately. Like I don't even want to give this breath.
Yeah. I was like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm gonna pass that one.
Like not only do I not like the idea in general, but to have something attempt some of the fantasy names I have in my other books, it's just not gonna work out.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Like you got all like the weird character names and planet names or something, and like they're just gonna massacre them, right? The AI thing. Yeah. Good Lord.
That's actually been one really funny result of putting my own books through these narrators who were like doing the research and figuring out the correct pronunciations for all these things. They've taught me how to say some of my own characters' names. I've been saying there's one character who I've been pronouncing as Hachiro for ages, and one of the narrators came back with like an audio sample or something, and he consistently pronounced it Hatsiro. And I was like, oh wait, is that the real pronunciation? And I went and looked it up, and it's like, sure enough, like, yeah, no, I was wrong. I'm glad he didn't ask me about it.
That's cool. I am a real stickler about like the names, especially in something like Stargun Messenger where all the names are made up. And then, like Gin Imra, and then people call her Jen all the time. And I'm like, no, it's Gin. It's like, sort of nerd drama, but it's okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool, though. Yeah, I look forward to that. Yeah. Well, I suppose maybe I'm the host, right?
I'm technically the host, but you need to tell me what to do.
Yeah. So, unless if you guys got something else you want to chat about, I'm more than happy to. I'm in no hurry, but yeah, I don't think our questions have disappeared. So. I would just
all I'll add is go check out the Dead MALLS Kickstarter. Links are in the chat still. You can check out the first 5 chapters for free. Help us get to 1.5K for the next, I think it was the hardcover sprayed edges.
Sprayed edges, which are all the rage. So we'll see if we can get there. Yeah, $1,500, and yeah, let's do it. So yeah, I just want to thank everybody again for participating and helping and everything like that. It's been a lot of fun. So
thanks for inviting me to be part of this.
Thanks for taking part. This is really cool. I really dig it. I'm really happy to share with you guys and just to share the book and to have it be positive and to put something positive out there. So that's very cool.
For sure. Awesome.
All right.
All right. So I guess I'll end it now. Thank you everyone for showing up. If you're still here, appreciate it. Links are in the chat. If you missed that earlier, you can rewind, watch the whole thing, listen to Darby's scandalous reveal about the crap he got up to at his own MALLS.
Yeah. And second person.
You gotta hook him. All right. Have a good evening, everyone, or whatever time of day it is for you.